Hide. Dodge flying slippers. Avoid that one uncle determined to feed you. Your mission, escape uncle's celebration alive and unfed. This culturally rich stealth comedy follows an introverted teen fleeing the world's most persistent hospitality. Can you survive the family gathering? Welcome to episode 47 of the 5 T's of Stealth, where we will be discussing Azooma Escape. Don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's what I will be going with. Once again, the 5 T's include tasks, terrain, tools, threats, and tension. These are what I consider to be the fundamentals of stealth gaming. The story of this game is rather simple. You play as Jasur. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, and I'm sure there will be more, so let me go ahead and say once again, I apologize for my poor pronunciation. Jasur is attending this large family gathering in order to congratulate his uncle on becoming the new village chief. Jasur wants to simply offer his congratulations and leave, but the rest of the family has something else in mind. By something else, I simply mean extreme hospitality, as the synopsis mentioned. Jasur's main goal, as I mentioned, is to find his uncle. But throughout the game, he will run into many different family members and end up on fetch quests, more or less. The first family member I want to mention is Shaddad. Shaddad is another one of Jasur's uncles and was in charge of planning the gathering and doesn't take too kindly to Jasur wanting to leave early and exclaims how no one leaves on an empty stomach. Shaddad basically ends up chasing after Jasur throughout the entire game. The other family member I want to mention is Amira. Amira is Jasur's aunt, but is actually younger than him. She happens to be a bit of a troublemaker and puts Jasur in a bit of a sticky situation. It is family tradition for the village chief to pass down a specific sword to the new chief. Amira takes this sword, and Jasur unknowingly helped her do so. This of course leads to a lot more chaos and Jasur trying to recover the sword to clear his name. This ends with Jasur chasing down Amira, who ends up accidentally cutting herself on the sword, leading Jasur to carry her on his back to the infirmary. Whenever Jasur crouches with Amira, she puts up her hood, which is honestly just adorable. In my opinion, these are the two main family members, and I don't really feel like talking about the rest. There's one other major element to the story, and that is the existence of jinns. Jinns are basically spirits, or genies, and are naturally feared entities. Early in the game, Jasur will meet a talking cat who happens to be a jinn named Saad. Saad will assist Jasur in several situations, including in a haunted house filled with other jinns, and the end of the game when the jinns take over. That's right, towards the end of the game, the jinn chief will kidnap the entire village so that he can throw his own Azooma, or celebration. It's up to Jasur to defeat the jinns and save the people, leading to a celebration for Jasur at the end of the game. So, that's the story. What starts as a simple family gathering that a young boy wants to get out of as quickly as possible soon turns into fetch quests and tracking missions, ending with a jinn takeover. In terms of the actual mission design, you will simply be doing fetch quests, as I mentioned, or looking for specific people who can guide you to the next area. That's pretty much the whole game, and it gets really repetitive really quickly. Go talk to your grandmother to ask where your uncle is, and then she'll ask you to find her phone and other possessions. Things of that nature are pretty much constant throughout the game. The big exception to this would be boss fights, but we'll talk about that later. The level design is decent enough in this game. The game excels with a wide variety of visual differences, but each area feels pretty much the exact same to traverse. I think a big factor to this similar feeling is the fact that you're running in and between a lot of different buildings. Go to this family member's house, and then this other family member's house, and so on and so forth. These buildings don't really feel all that different to traverse, and the streets between each area definitely don't do any better. The big change from everything else in my opinion is the haunted house. The haunted house has two main mechanics that make it feel different. Firstly, there are a ton of holes in the floors for you to fall into. These are not unique to the haunted house, but they are certainly more prominent here than anywhere else. The other main mechanic, which is expanded on further in the final mission, happens to be portals. Portals mix things up since you don't really know where each portal will take you, leading trial and error to become your best friend as you learn the best pathing of each area. Later in the game, you'll come across like a forest or jungle area, which does feel unique with the addition of quicksand and the reduction of your vision. In this area, there are many sections where you'll be running through the trees, making it difficult to know where you're going. There's even one mission set in a maze with fog blocking your sight. There's one other minor mechanic that adds some flair. Rather than there always being stairs to take from one level to another, in some buildings there will be slides which naturally only go down, but it's a nice change of pace. All in all, the level design is, again, decent enough, but I rarely found myself excited by the feel of the level, and the game is very linear, meaning you don't really get to decide how you're going to solve each zone. You don't have a ton of options available as Chasseur. Starting with the basics, there is no sprint. You are always the same speed, but general movement does feel solid. The exception to this is of course when you crouch, which will make you move slower and allow you to duck behind cover and avoid enemy vision cones. I mentioned it briefly with Amira's crouch animation, but I also quite like Jassur's crouching animation. It's very slick. A very important movement ability in this game is a dodge roll. This roll allows you to basically jump over short objects as well as people. Rolling comes in handy quite a bit when trying to avoid enemies, especially during a chase. Some objects you can roll over include vases or small pieces of furniture. In many areas, there will also be certain objects that you can hide under. This includes, but is not limited to, different vehicles and types of furniture such as tables. Chasseur also has the ability to push or move certain objects. This is typically achieved with the click of a button rather than by actually pushing against the objects. This is usually done when a certain piece of furniture is blocking a path and you have to move it to get into that area. I liked leading enemies into a secluded area and then trapping them by moving one of the objects back into the path, blocking their escape. You really only have one form of attack or offense in this game, which is simply throwing projectiles. There are a few different items which will serve different purposes. The basic items are a little cup or can and a soccer ball. The small cup will temporarily stun guards and can be used to flip levers as well. The soccer ball is used for the same objectives, but when thrown, it will ricochet around for a bit. The next throwable item is a bag of fertilizer. These basically function like a smoke grenade and will provide cover while disorienting your foes. Your enemies will actively run away when fertilizer is thrown, which can be pretty overpowered, especially when it feels like you completely whiff the throw. Most items will be unusable against the djinns as they are spirits, however they are weak to lamps, and late in the game that is the last throwable you are given. Lamps are basically the equivalent of the basic cup or soccer ball, except it works on djinns for a temporary stun. Lamps are obviously better than the items that don't actually connect, but I gotta say I'd rather have the fertilizer any day. It does work on djinns, and again it felt very strong. These projectiles will be spread around the map, and in some areas there will be boxes you can open that have a chance of containing the different items. The first set of enemies I want to discuss are all the relatives and attendees of this celebration. Every enemy in this game has a vision cone, and if you touch that vision cone at all, they will go on high alert. I should mention that in terms of the stealth, most enemies feel the exact same. It's more so how the enemies react when they stop you. Interestingly enough, if an enemy spots you, there isn't any sort of alarm system in this game, and you just have to deal with the guards that actually lay their eyes on you. If any enemy catches you or hits you with a projectile, that is game over as you can only take one hit. For starters, there are the normal human enemies who are either stationary or running around and wearing blue. Next are enemies wearing red that are much faster. Guards in purple shirts will start to chase you, then stop briefly for a very quick charge that covers a lot of distance in a straight line. There are also guards with a red headscarf that will throw their sandal at you. One of the funnier enemy variants in my opinion is the children you will come across. Occasionally, there will be a child who has stolen a key or other item, and you have to track them down. If this child spots you, they will actually start running away and spread tacks all over the ground. If you step on a tack, a little animation will play where you grab your foot and you are briefly stopped. These tacks are also occasionally spread around some maps and are not only tied to the child enemies. In fact, some children just run around and don't throw tacks, if I'm remembering correctly. Lastly, there will be some women with whistles. If one of these enemies see you, rather than chasing after you, they will simply blow the whistle and that's game over. Now let's transition to talking about the djinn enemies. These enemy variants basically mimic what I've already mentioned, just for the djinns. For starters, however, I need to mention that djinns, as spirits, can actually just phase through any sort of obstacles or furniture. In other words, when they start chasing you, they cut a lot of corners. The basic djinn enemies are wearing white and have the default speed as they chase you. I don't believe there is a djinn with just a higher speed, but we do have the charge attack and projectile variants. Djinns wearing teal are what I like to call sonic djinns, since they will spin in a ball and launch at you once locked on. The projectile djinns I have simply referred to in my notes as Hadoken djinns, since they fire a little blue spirit projectile. These enemies will be wearing yellow. There is also a Screamer Djinn, which is the equivalent of the Whistlers, meaning if you are spotted, you lose. A nice little addition to mix things up involves the boxes I mentioned earlier. Occasionally, when you open a box, a djinn will pop out and start chasing you, so be careful. The last enemies to discuss before the bosses are the little creatures. This includes rats and scorpions. There are two different rats, a normal rat and a giant rat. They basically act the exact same. Rats are not chasing you and are just roaming around an area. If they happen to run into you, it's still a game over, but it's more of an accident and unintentional. These rats will cease to exist if you hit them with a projectile. They just poof and are gone. The scorpions are basically the exact same, just a different skin for a different area. That's it for the actual enemies, but there are some environmental threats to discuss. I mentioned them briefly earlier, but there are holes in the ground which you can fall into. Some of these holes are massive and lock down an area, while some are much smaller and can be rolled over. I've got to be honest and say, a lot of the time when I fell into these holes, it felt like bullshit. I didn't think I was very close, but hey, maybe that's just me not understanding or not realizing what was really going on. There's also the quicksand I mentioned earlier, which will slowly drag you down. I believe it only occurred once or twice, but in some missions, breaking vases is forbidden. This is rather important considering every time you roll over a vase, it actually breaks. So in these missions where you can't break vases, your rolling is much more restricted and you have to be more careful. Let's talk bosses. The first boss is your Uncle Shaddad. The first time you fight him, he will start by charging at you a few times. After you have successfully dodged his charges, he will fly into the air by rapidly spinning his towel and send in a bunch of guards. These guards will only move from left to right and vice versa. All you have to do is avoid getting hit. It's like one of those Mario Party mini games. After that, he will start trying to stomp on you by jumping high into the air. At this time, bricks will start falling, but once you've avoided this, the fight is won. Shaddad will appear frequently throughout the game while pursuing you. In several instances, he will try to stomp on you while you're running through a building. The second time you fight Shaddad, he's changed up a bit. The fight will begin with him charging at you still, but now some debris will fall which you have to bait him towards and have him run into it. After this, he will start flying and stomping again, but this time when he stomps, there's a shockwave. When this shockwave hits the debris, it transforms it into small wood planks. You have to pick up the wood planks and throw them at him. After this, Shaddad will extend his towel towards you, which once again will transform the debris. Continue to dodge and throw planks until he is down. Next, let's talk Amira. The Amira fight is basically a game of hide and seek tag. She hides from you and you search for her. However, you also have to dodge any guards in the room. In other words, you are the hider and the seeker. You'll be opening boxes trying to find her, and if she's inside, she'll take off running. I believe the fight is over once you've caught her 3 times. The next time you fight Amira, she is just sprinting all over the place and dropping tags. This time, you have to hit her with projectiles while dodging the Whistlers, who cause an immediate game over when they spot you. Naturally, fighting a boss where getting seen means you lose is a bit tricky. Next, let's discuss the Dancer boss fight. This dance is one of swords. The boss will start by spinning rapidly like a whirlwind, with his sword spinning in all directions as he chases you. While chasing you, he will throw the occasional sword or two. Then the dancer will stand still and continue to spin while launching swords in all directions. After that, he will begin chasing you again while swords fall from the ceiling. To win this fight, you must dodge all of his attacks while throwing projectiles of your own. Next up is Kaze, your cousin. He fights you once towards the end of the game in a rather simple showdown. While fighting Kaze, the two of you are separated by a large quicksand pit. On your side are a few trees which you must hide behind to dodge your cousin's slingshot. When a projectile from Kaze hits a tree, a projectile will fall that you can pick up and launch back at him. As the fight progresses, the occasional sand tornado or two will come across your side which you must dodge. The final boss is the Djinn Chief. The fight begins with the Chief making several clones of himself which will chase after you. At this time, debris and lamps will begin falling from the sky. You need to throw the lamps to defeat all of his clones. Once his clones are defeated, you can throw the next lamp at the Chief, prompting him to take a portal into the floor. Following his disappearance, several giant portals will appear on the floor with giant hands coming up out of them. Initially, the hands are stationary, arising from one point and quickly descending back down. However, as the onslaught continues, some hands will move towards one another from left and right, then intertwine their fingers before sinking back into their portals. At the same time, the Djinn Chief will stick his head and shoulders out of a smaller portal while lamps are falling. You have to dodge the giant hands and hit him with a lamp. After this, the moving hands will re-emerge. However, this time, There will also be solitary hands moving up and down without a pair. As you continue to dodge, the hands will stop and a new portal appears with the giant head of the Jinn Chief emerging. This emergence causes debris and lamps to fall from above. After a short delay, the Jinn Chief will suck in all the items that have fallen. You have to quickly grab one of the lamps before he sucks it up and throw it at him, ending the fight. The Jinn Chief is probably my favorite fight, and I just absolutely love the visuals. Azuma Escape is honestly a bit of a difficult game, but for a different reason than normal. Let me start by explaining that Azuma Escape is much less of a stay hidden the entire time game and more of a constantly moving, avoiding the danger game. In other words, this is very fast-paced movement stealth. For example, at the end of several missions, your location will be compromised, and countless guards will start to chase you as you run for the exit. Now, let me bring this back to why the game is difficult in a bit of an unorthodox way. It's really quite simple. The enemy vision cones swing incredibly quickly and suddenly. This means when you're traversing through a level and think you're safe, multiple vision cones will just swoosh and flick on you out of nowhere. This of course means that a big chunk of this game is just running for your life. I found myself constantly spotted and praying for a spot to hide or a way to end the chase. Luckily, and this is where things get a little funny, but you can end a chase pretty easily under the right conditions. As long as you are not directly in line of sight, you can just hide under an object and the chase is practically over immediately. It doesn't matter how close they are or how many guards are chasing you, just break line of sight and disappear. The other option, which is a little funny, is that you can just talk to an NPC and it will end the chase. Just progressing the mission gives you this slight sense of safety. So again, it's a little difficult, but not really in a high tension type of way. Truthfully, it can be a little frustrating when this vision cone flick happens since it feels really random. Sometimes you'll even see the guards start to turn, and the vision cone doesn't quite match up with where they're looking, and I think that might be a big contributor to the flick. This made the whole game feel extremely chaotic, but I'm all for some fast-paced evasion stealth every once in a while. There's a few more miscellaneous things I'd like to mention before we wrap things up. I played this game on release, but I have seen a few updates since then. I'm not sure how those may have impacted the game, or if any of my statements are now false because of any changes. I have two other things related to audio that I wish to mention. First off, the music is really good in this game. I found myself regularly just hanging out and getting lost in the vibes. The other thing is related to the volume of the damn footsteps. Within probably 5 minutes, I had to go and turn down the sound effects volume because all I could hear was my man stomping. I've never experienced such overbearing footsteps, and I'm not sure if that's been fixed, but you have been warned. Azuma Escape was a good time for sure, but it's a very untraditional type of stealth where you're constantly on the move and regularly in high-speed chases. I definitely found myself frustrated more than a few times with the vision cones that seem to almost randomly lock onto you, but the overall charm of the game makes it difficult to dislike, and I find myself rather mixed on the overall experience.